Hi everyone, good evening. Tonight's a late video, but I'm still gonna make it. So today is day 13 of the video challenge. And today I want to continue on the topic of emotional intelligence and really talk about the third step in kind of improving our emotional intelligence. And that third step really is about controlling our thoughts. And so I've written down some notes because it's been a really long day and I just don't want to miss anything. So when I say controlling our thoughts, it seems like a really easy thing to do, but it really isn't. And there's been today I want to talk about what that it means and really give you some practical tips on how to do that. Two things that really have made a huge difference in quietening my monkey brain. I have a lot of chatter that goes on in my brain, and it's certainly better than it's ever been because I've learned some things, techniques on how to kind of slow it down and stop it from spiraling out of control. So most of the time when we ask people, what are you thinking? Their response is nothing. And really, that's never true, especially for a woman, right? We always have many, many things going through our brains at a time. And really, when we're saying nothing, it's just that it's really nothing nothing that's important, right? It doesn't mean that our brain is in our mind is quiet and there's crickets chirping. There's a lot of things going on. However, it's just that nothing is really all that important. That the thoughts are kind of just spinning around in there, and we're just not really paying that much attention. Essentially, thoughts are things. And what do I mean by that? What I mean is that most of the time we are not consciously aware of what we're thinking. But what's important is that our thoughts are directly responsible for our emotions. And so we can't feel anger or frustration or sadness or happiness or even confidence without having a prior thought. And, why is this important? Is because, essentially our thoughts directly control how we feel. And so we are the only ones that can control our emotions. The other reason why it's really important is that we have to remember we are the ones that make ourselves feel. And so essentially, we choose to respond with an emotion to somebody's behavior or to their reaction. People do not make us feel. So most commonly, I'll hear people say, he made me feel sad. He made me feel embarrassed. He made me feel angry. Well, nobody can make us feel anything. They can say things and they can respond and have a behavior, and we react to that, but we are in control of our own emotions, and our body or our brain chooses to develop an emotional response. So we have that power to control that. So essentially, there has been two things in my life that has really helped me kind of control my thoughts, so that I don't spin my wheels and end up either dwelling on the past or throwing myself into the future, so ending up being anxious or depressed. And one of which is reading the book The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. I read that book about 20 years ago, and it was life-changing for me. The other thing that was really helpful was doing something called a thought record, and that is something that you'll come across in cognitive behavioral therapy. So when I was in my 20s and I was newly diagnosed with anxiety, this was a way for me to kind of stop those things, those thought patterns that would really make me dive into emotional sabotage of myself. So when we do thought records, the first thing we do is we look at the situation or the trigger and we ask the questions who, what, where, when, why. And it's really important to write this stuff down, because putting pen to paper is important because we end up disarming the thought. It has less power when you write it in a journal than when you allow it to stay in our minds. In our minds, it's a very small place. And so when we have a thought, it ends up feeling much more powerful and bigger than what it really is. And when you put pen to paper, it tends to really put things into perspective. Or talking, and talking is a way I really kind of ruminate with things, and it allows me to kind of shrink that and take away its power. So once we look at the situation, say it was a situation where you had you were at work and you were called into your boss's office and your boss gave you some feedback. They just wanted to check in on something. It wasn't really good or bad, but they just wanted to check in on anything. You weren't in trouble, you weren't reprimanded. But then the next step is you identify your feelings. So give it a name. What is it? Is it anger? Is it sadness? Is it embarrassment? Is it disappointment? Is it frustration? Is it anxiety? Rate it from 0 to 10. I find this scale really helpful to be able to decide if things got better or if they got worse. And then kind of identify where you're feeling that in your body. So after you come out of your boss's office, you feel really anxious or embarrassed or maybe unworthy. And so then the third step is really identifying the unhelpful thought. And maybe the helpful thought is, I'm not good enough, I'm a failure. Okay? And generally these unhelpful thoughts, I like to call them hot thoughts. They're kind of the running dialogue that we tell ourselves. So it's like a movie that the ego has set up in our brain, and it's a kind of a constant theme that comes up in multiple situations. That is bullshit, but we believe it. And so we really believe this is real. And so once we identify what that hot thought is, so say it's I'm not good enough and I'm a failure, then the next step is really writing down the facts that support that is true. So if I was in that situation and I got called into the office for whatever reason, it was, I would definitely come out and start thinking I am not good enough. Because that is a common dialogue in my brain, is I'm not good enough, I'm a failure. And when I look at the evidence to support that unhelpful thought, there would be no evidence. I am very successful at my job. I'm not getting fired. My patients love me. On and on and on, right? Then, so to support the unhelpful thought. So there is no support for that. And then the next step is find facts that provide evidence against it. So just like I was saying before, I'm holding a job, I'm very good at it. My patients like me, my colleagues like me, they respect the quality of work that I do. And so there's a lot of evidence to support or against that hot thought. The next thing, what's important is reframing that thought. So reframing it and developing something that's more realistic and balanced. So reframing the thought of, I'm not good enough or I'm a failure is that, I am learning, I'm constantly learning and evolving in my work, or I am, I learned something new today. I am not perfect. Whatever that is, reframing it in a positive sense, because the reality is we're all works in progress. We're not perfect. Constructive criticism is helpful. And so looking for the positive within that. And then the last step is really to re-rate the emotion. So how do you feel now? So if at the beginning your anxiety was an 8 on 10, as you go through this exercise, most people will find that anxiety or whatever feeling they've identified has decreased. So your anxiety is a little bit better because you've kind of stopped the wheel of that negative thought snowballing into basically what it could have happened is if you didn't go through that, could have perpetuated into, I'm not good enough, I'm a failure, I'm going to get fired, I'm never going to amount to anything, you know, and that flings you into the future, which is really what perpetuates anxiety. Or it could, put you into the past and say, I've never been good at anything. I'm not worthy to have this job. I'm lazy. I'm this, I'm that, whatever that dialogue may be. So using cognitive behavioral therapy is really about retraining your mind, providing evidence to be able to, first to identify the emotions that you're feeling, provide evidence to support it and against it, reframing it, and then reevaluating the emotion we have. And doing this in the moment when you're triggered or you're feeling an intense emotion, this can be really helpful. But it also doesn't have to be done right in that moment. You definitely can do this at the end of the day. You reflect on a difficult situation, a difficult emotion, and go through this as an exercise. Have a notebook with you. You really will end up being able to identify your themes so that the dialogue that goes on in your head that is false about yourself, and so that you can disengage with that and detach. Anyways, those are my thoughts for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments below other techniques you use to stop your brain from kind of, over analyzing things, or getting stuck in that rabbit hole of negative emotion. I know for me, sometimes meditation can be really, really helpful. So just make comments in the bottom. Let me know what kind of techniques you use that helps you stop those thoughts and helps you really be in control. Because if we're in control of our thoughts, we can be in control of our emotions, and then we can really be, a calm, confident, centered individual who really is aligned with their own power, and, is unstoppable. So anyways, have a great night. And I will see you tomorrow for day 14. Take care. Bye. Night.